The wind cut through Evangeline Thorne's threadbare cloak like a blade of ice, each gust promising death to those foolish enough to venture into the Montana wilderness unprepared. Snow swirled around her stumbling form as she pressed forward along the barely visible trail, her worn boots sliding on the frozen ground. 3 days without proper food had left her weak, but desperation drove her onward through the gathering dusk. She had nowhere left to go. The scandal had followed her from Chicago to Denver, whispers of impropriety with her employer destroying any hope of respectable work. Now winter threatened to finish what society's judgment had started. Through the white veil of snow, a warm glow appeared ahead. Lamplight spilled from the windows of a sturdy log cabin, smoke rising from its chimney like a prayer answered. Evangeline's legs gave way as relief flooded through her, and she collapsed into the snow just yards from salvation, darkness claiming her as boots crunched toward her fallen form. Gabriel Whitehorse had seen enough death to recognize it approaching. The woman in his arms weighed no more than a child as he carried her toward the cabin, her lips blue with cold, breath shallow as winter air. His daughters pressed against the window, their wide eyes reflecting the lamplight as he shouldered through the door. Before we dive into this incredible frontier love story, hit that subscribe button because what happens next will absolutely captivate you. He laid her near the fire, chafing her frozen hands between his calloused palms. Emma, his youngest, crept closer with a quilt their mother had sewn, while 9-year-old Sarah fetched warm broth without being asked. The stranger's eyelids fluttered as warmth began its slow work. When consciousness returned, she found herself staring into the darkest eyes she had ever seen, set in a face that spoke of both gentleness and strength. Gabriel Whitehorse studied her with quiet assessment, seeing past her bedraggled state to something deeper. "You need shelter," he said simply, his voice carrying the cadence of 2 cultures. "My girls need a mother. Perhaps we can help each other survive this winter." Dawn brought the scent of biscuits and bacon, unfamiliar sounds of domestic harmony filling the cabin that had known only masculine efficiency for 2 years. Evangeline moved through the kitchen with quiet competence, her governess training evident in every measured gesture. She had braided Emma's tangled hair and mended a tear in Sarah's dress before the sun cleared the mountains. Gabriel watched from the doorway, coffee growing cold in his hands. The sight of his daughters laughing over breakfast stirred something he had thought buried with his wife. Evangeline caught his gaze, and color rose in her pale cheeks, uncertainty flickering across her features. "I can earn my keep," she said softly, gesturing toward the transformed kitchen. "I know you're taking a risk with a stranger." "The girls need stability," he replied, setting down his cup. "Winter's long here, longer when you're alone." Outside, snow continued falling, sealing them together in their fragile arrangement. In town, Mrs. Henderson peered through her lace curtains, her sharp tongue already forming the words that would spread like wildfire through the settlement. That half-breed Whitehorse had taken in some fallen woman, mark her words. The nightmare came with a howling wind, Emma's terrified sobs cutting through the darkness. Gabriel found Evangeline already there, cradling his youngest daughter against her shoulder, humming a melody that seemed to chase away the shadows. The child's breathing gradually steadied, small fingers clutching Evangeline's nightgown as if it were salvation itself. "She dreams of her mother sometimes," Gabriel said quietly from the doorway. The fever took her so quickly. Evangeline's hand stilled on Emma's hair. "I'm sorry. Loss leaves wounds that never fully heal." Later, as they sat by the dying fire, Gabriel spoke of things he had never shared with another soul. His Lakota mother stories, the white father who claimed him but never truly accepted him, the constant balance between 2 worlds that often wanted no part of him. Margaret had seen past the judgment, loved him despite society's disapproval. "You understand what it means to be cast out," he said, studying her face in the firelight. "More than I wish," Evangeline whispered, her own secrets burning behind her careful composure. The wolves appeared at sunset, yellow eyes gleaming through the bare trees as they circled the hen house with predatory patience. Gabriel reached for his rifle, but Emma's terrified scream froze his blood. She had wandered outside to gather eggs, now trapped between the cabin and the snarling pack. Evangeline moved without thought, snatching up the iron poker from the fireplace. Her skirts whipped around her legs as she ran toward the child, shouting and brandishing the makeshift weapon. The lead wolf turned, hackles rising, but something in her fierce determination gave it pause. Gabriel's shot split the air, sending the pack scattering into the wilderness. He swept Emma into his arms, then turned to find Evangeline standing in the snow, poker still raised, her chest heaving with adrenaline and protective fury. "You could have been killed," he said, his voice rough with emotions he had not expected to feel again. "So could she," Evangeline replied simply, her eyes meeting his with unwavering intensity. In that moment, surrounded by danger and melting snow, Gabriel felt the walls around his heart begin to crumble. Reverend Morrison arrived with the morning frost, his black coat stark against the white landscape. Behind him rode three of the town's most prominent citizens, their faces set with righteous determination. Gabriel met them at his gate, Emma and Sarah peering fearfully from the cabin window, while Evangeline remained carefully out of sight. "This arrangement must end, White Horse," the Reverend declared, his breath forming clouds in the bitter air. "A fallen woman living under your roof with innocent children present. The community will not stand for it." Thomas Hartwell, the banker, nodded gravely. "Think of your daughter's futures. What respectable families will associate with them if you persist in this scandal?" Gabriel's jaw tightened. "She's done nothing but care for my family. Her reputation precedes her," Morrison replied coldly. "The Chicago incident, the Denver disgrace. Such women bring corruption wherever they go." From the cabin, Evangeline watched through the frost-covered glass, her heart breaking as she saw the trap closing around them. These men held Gabriel's daughter's futures in their hands, their social standing, their chance for education and marriage. Evangeline folded her few belongings with trembling hands, each item a reminder of the brief happiness she had known. The carpet bag that had carried her through so many desperate journeys lay open on the bed like a wound. Emma's drawing of their family, stick figures holding hands beneath a smiling sun, lay on top of her worn chemise. "I have to go," she whispered to the empty room, tears falling onto the crude paper. "They deserve better than the shadow I cast." Gabriel found her by the window, watching snow fall like her shattered dreams. The sight of her packed bag hit him like a physical blow, years of carefully constructed walls crumbling in an instant. "You're leaving," he said, the words barely audible. "The town won't accept me. Your daughters will suffer for my presence. I won't let that happen. And what they want, does that matter nothing?" Evangeline turned, her face streaked with tears. Sometimes love means letting go. Outside, the wind howled like a living thing, as if nature itself mourned the family being torn apart by human judgment. The fever struck Emma like lightning, her small body convulsing with chills that no blanket could warm. Gabriel's hands shook as he felt her burning forehead, memories of Margaret's final illness flooding back with crushing force. The nearest doctor was 3 days' ride through impassable snow. Evangeline dropped her carpet bag at the door, her decision made in an instant. She had nursed children through scarlet fever in Chicago, had learned healing from necessity and desperation. Cool water, willow bark tea, constant vigilance through the endless night. For 2 days she never left Emma's side, bathing the child's fevered body, forcing drops of liquid between cracked lips, singing lullabies through her own exhaustion. Gabriel brought food she barely touched, his eyes dark with fear and something deeper. When Reverend Morrison arrived to offer last rites, he found Evangeline collapsed over the child's bed, Emma's breathing finally steady and natural. The fever had broken at dawn, taking with it the judgment of those who witnessed a fallen woman's devotion. "She saved my daughter," Gabriel said quietly, his voice carrying absolute certainty. The letter arrived with the supply wagon, its edges worn from traveling across the frontier. Gabriel found Evangeline staring at the familiar handwriting, her hands trembling as she broke the wax seal. Mrs. Patterson from Chicago had written, guilt finally compelling her to reveal the truth. Her husband had pursued me, Evangeline whispered, tears streaming down her face. When I refused his advances, he claimed I seduced him. Mrs. Patterson knew, but society demanded a scapegoat. I was convenient. Gabriel pulled her into his arms, feeling the weight of injustice she had carried alone. The lies that had driven her into the wilderness, the shame that was never hers to bear, the strength it had taken to survive when the world turned its back. It doesn't matter, he said fiercely, his lips against her hair. Truth or lies, past or present. I choose you. I choose us. Outside their window, the first green shoots of spring pushed through the melting snow, nature itself declaring that winter's hold was breaking. In the distance, smoke rose from the neighboring ranch where old Henrik had begun spreading word of the woman who had saved the White Horse child. The town meeting convened in the schoolhouse, lamplight casting long shadows across faces divided by conviction and doubt. Gabriel stood before the assembly, Evangeline at his side, despite the whispers that followed her entrance. Emma clung to her skirts, living proof of the woman's devotion. She has proven her worth, Gabriel declared, his voice carrying across the hushed room. While you spoke of corruption, she saved my daughter's life. While you preached judgment, she showed only love. Reverend Morrison rose, his face grave. The past cannot be simply forgotten, White Horse. But Henrik Larson stepped forward, his weathered hands gripping his hat. My wife was dying of lung fever last winter. This woman came through the storm, nursed her back to health, asked for nothing in return. Other voices joined his. Mrs. Chun from the general store spoke of Evangeline's kindness to her children. Young Tom Bradley testified to her help with his injured horse. One by one, the truth emerged like spring water through winter ice, washing away the lies that had poisoned their judgment. Spring transformed the cabin into something resembling hope, wildflowers blooming where snow had once threatened death. Evangeline knelt in the garden, teaching Sarah the names of herbs, while Emma gathered smooth stones for their border. The practical arrangement born of desperation had grown into something neither had dared imagine. Gabriel watched from a porch, whittling a small horse for Emma's collection. The town council had grudgingly withdrawn their ultimatum, faces red with shame at Henrik's revelations. But more important than their approval was the peace settling over his family like morning mist. We should be properly married, he said that evening as they sat by the fire. Not from necessity this time, but from choice. Evangeline looked up from her mending, needle suspended in golden lamplight. Are you proposing to me, Gabriel Whitehorse? I'm asking if you'll have me, knowing what it means to be my wife in truth, knowing that my heart belongs to you completely. The girls exchanged knowing glances from their corner, Sarah rolling her eyes at Emma's barely contained giggles. Their family was already complete. Ceremony would simply make it official. The wedding took place in their own cabin, surrounded by neighbors who had learned the difference between judgment and justice. Evangeline wore Margaret's dress, altered by loving hands and blessed by a husband's generous heart. Emma scattered wildflower petals, while Sarah held the simple ring Gabriel had carved from walnut wood. Reverend Morrison spoke the words with newfound humility, his voice carrying genuine warmth as he pronounced them husband and wife. When Gabriel kissed his bride, the assembled crowd erupted in cheers that echoed across the valley like a celebration of second chances. As summer settled over their land, Evangeline's belly began to round with new life. The child would grow up knowing only love and acceptance, never questioning their place in a world that had once seemed so harsh. Gabriel built an addition to the cabin, rooms filled with laughter and the sound of running feet. Have you ever found belonging in unexpected places? Tell us about your moment of acceptance in the comments below. Standing on their porch as autumn painted the mountains gold, Evangeline finally understood what home meant. It wasn't a place, but a choice, made daily by hearts brave enough to love despite the world's cruelty.